All right, we're live. Woo! Hello, everyone who's tuning in today. Happy Friday. I know we're currently going through a lot in the world today, but I hope this helps bring a little bit of more positive energy into the world, into your life for this hour. I'm here with my friend Ariel Foxie, who is just a human that I've met, not even a year ago, probably in October of last year, I think it was, on World Mental Health Day, actually, at Nike at a workout that Mad Happy had hosted. And he's someone that I took a very strong liking to because of just his approach to everything he does with wellness. To give some background on, I guess, why I was drawn to him was because, I played sports my whole life. And after college, after I stopped playing, basketball, I got to a point where I couldn't motivate myself, and taking his class was actually something that kind of showed me that, there is hope to get back on track, because he was someone who really motivated me and made me feel great and excited to get my shit together, if I do have to say that. But, so welcome. How are you today? How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm doing good. I got my PB&J sandwich to calm my nerves, a little anxious, but it's just part of the process, I think. Doing good.
Good. I'm glad you're here, and thank you so much for your time and for being here. So I want to start, I guess, by having you just share, where you're from, where you're based now, how you got into what you're into now. Because I know you've mentioned before it started in other other career paths or other areas of life. So I want you to share your story as much as you want to tell.
All right. I'm originally born in California, Orange County actually, but grew up in the Bay Area, San Jose. Moved out to New York, which is where I'm based now, almost 6 years ago. As far as being in the, health and wellness industry, personal training wasn't my first introduction to that. I actually started off doing operations at a large health club. So I was working front desk, then moved to manager on duty, eventually moved into sales and operations, and had the option during sales and operations, because that's kind of when my training career started for myself. I wasn't always in fitness. I didn't play high school sports or anything like that. I really started super late, and I'll actually talk about that in a bit. But I was in sales and operations for a while, and then eventually moved into training on the side, kind of, because I had people that were signing up with the health club that I was working at asking me to give them training advice or even just to work with me. So I kind of wore two hats for a little bit, but it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth because it's not how I envisioned helping people when learning more about sales and operations. I kind of left that industry, then went into working at a restaurant when I moved into New York. Still kind of found myself unhappy because the lifestyle change was really interesting. And then had someone mention my name to a friend, Steven, over at SN Training about possibly taking me on. And first I said no, because, personal training wasn't something that growing up was always idolized or fantasized about, right? I think for me it was more about, becoming a doctor or, engineer or a lot of these other things. It just wasn't fitness. It wasn't a thought. I said no the first time. It took me a couple months of being unhappy, working in the restaurant, to finally be yo, I'll help you with sales and operations, and start to learn the ropes. And within the first week of actually meeting him, he was yo, you got your first client on Friday. And things just kind of shifted from there. But that's as far as how I got into training, as far as my fitness career, and not being in any sports at an early age. My sisters were actually the ones who played a lot of sports in elementary and high school, and those were the ones that I kind of looked up to. I had an older sister who was captain of her soccer team. I had another one who, was always in basketball. That was the one that I always wanted to beat. She had the and ones. I had the Shaqs. She was just super nice on the court, so I always try to keep up with her, and that's kind of who I had to look up to, and I had another sister that was in cheerleading. They all got into dancing during high school, and choreography, so I kind of looked up to that and got into dancing like late in high school, and then didn't start really taking better care of my health as far as like training until like early 20s. So, yep, that's my story.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you reconsidered and came back into the training world, because we wouldn't have met. And a lot of people I'm seeing in the comments right now are saying how much you have helped them in their lives. So we're all very appreciative for that. But I'm just gonna read a little bit of your bio to give the people watching more insight as to what this Mentl.Sesh is all about. So you actually specialize in improving overall well-being from a holistic center using a variety of approaches that encompass conscious body awareness and understanding. And so that's something that, I kind of picked up as soon as I met you. Is just, there's trainers who I think are so focused on just the physical aspects of it, which is amazing. And it's good for some people, but there's also trainers out there who encompass everything, the mental aspects and the physical aspects. And I think that's so important. So that's really what we're going to be talking a lot about today, is both of those aspects and how they kind of all intersect. And, before we went on live, we were actually talking about the similarities of, being a therapist and being a trainer, and how there's so much alignment there, because, I'm essentially helping people with their mental health, and you're helping people with both their physical and mental health. So it's really complementary how the two careers kind of align, and it's really great to see. So we have a lot of people hyping you up right now in the comments. I'm going to add.
I'm like, I can't see any of it. I'm over here drenched in sweat.
Laura says, yes, Foxy. I'm adding her to the screen here. Okay. So my first question, I guess, to get this all kind of started is, what does mental health mean to you? Like, how do you view mental health as a thing in this world?
For me, like, I actually had to say, it's funny, like, when you asked me that not too long ago, like, the idea for me, mental health is like the quality of conversation you have with yourself, and I think a lot of times it's more about the introspection part, right? You actually have to go inwards to start to understand the conversations that we have with ourselves. A lot of time, we are doing a lot of thinking from an outward, I guess, perspective, right? Like how we're judged by other people, but realistically, it's how you communicate with yourself, like the narrative that you have with yourself, about yourself, and how you manage all that. Like, to me, that's what mental health is for myself.
Absolutely.
It's quality.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it has to do a lot with like how we think, how we feel, how we act, and how all that's kind of connected. And, when you go into like thinking about our behaviors and our actions, right? Like, fitness is an action, but there's so much of the mental health aspects that are involved in that. And so, how would you say mental health plays a role when it comes to fitness or wellness?
I think it's a large part, right? Because with training, a lot of times there is some intimidation that happens. Like, I think we don't realize that in competition or even training or sport, it's about being able to manage anxiety and arousal points, right? Like, there is nervousness that settles in before a game if you are. Actually, a lot of us play games, whether it's a pickup game, whether you're in a league, or even a professional athlete. Like, there is a feeling of emotion that does come up, and it's about managing that. It's not about shutting one off or the other. It's just being aware of both of them. Mental health and fitness, for me, in my experience, it's the idea of, like, there's days where I don't want to work out. Like, that's bottom line. I'm not someone that all the time, like, oh shit, I gotta go. Sorry. I always gotta be out there and, like, run, or I gotta lift, or, like, but it's this conversation knowing that, like, I know the patterns that I was in before I started training. I guess I'll talk about that. All right, so I started training because of a heartbreak. All right, I'll just put that out there. So instead of constantly being down and beat up about myself, like, and knowing that negative cycle of, like, starting to drink too much, starting to use alcohol and all that stuff, I decided to just go on a run. The action of being still was a lot harder than the action of doing. So I laced up shoes, and just went out for a run. Like anytime I had this down feeling or this hard feeling about myself, right? That's an emotional stress. That's then a mental stress. I decided to lace up and go take a run. And over time, I started to get a bit more hooked on that feeling of moving, bettering myself. It wasn't really about this like, I guess like this body composition thing. Like, yeah, or like the drinking and eating habits that happen from drinking and like hanging out all the time. Like I kind of took a wrong turn, but yeah, I started to kind of be more attracted to that feeling and like the things that came up. I went off on a tangent, sorry.
No, it's okay. No, that's great. I think it gives a lot of insight into like how all of this is, you know, really playing a role in why we do what we do. You know, like part of what I do in therapy as a therapist is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a model that some of us use, and it talks about how your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors are all connected. And so, you know, there's good coping skills, and then there's not so good coping skills that we have. And you know, what you were talking about when you went through the heartbreak, that was the event that happened. And, you know, I'm sure there were a lot of thoughts associated with that and a lot of feelings associated with that. And your behaviors went to working out, you know, doing something positive for your mental health. Whereas there's a lot of people out there in the world who don't have those protective factors in their lives who, you know, unfortunately end up down the road of the unhealthy coping skills. So this is kind of also just to show like how, you know, one healthy coping skill can kind of lead to even more greater things in life, and like where you're at now is like your whole journey. So yeah. But no, we were talking too about just like the idea of misconceptions in the fitness world and the wellness world with mental health. Are there any? I'm not in that world. I don't work in that world. So I'm just curious from your standpoint, like, do you find that there's people or clients or maybe other trainers you've encountered that feel that there's stigmas with mental health and fitness, or anything that might come up as far as like misconceptions about mental health as far as fitness goes? And maybe there's not. I don't know.
I mean, in my experience with working and talking with people who get to work out, trainees and sometimes even trainers, it's interesting because we have to wear multiple hats. Like from a trainer's perspective, we're constantly guiding and leading, right? Like, and sometimes you're managing many people in one room, so you kind of have to deal with a lot of things that get thrown off, and you forget that you're not dealing with exercises, you're not dealing with moves, you're dealing with people. A lot of times I don't think we take into consideration what that person might be dealing with their day-to-day basis, their weekly basis, or whatever might be going on in their life, and how they're coming into the training room to see you. Going back to it, some people use it as escape, right? Some people are there to kind of like, it's a part of their routine, they have healthy thoughts and they don't really think about it, but I think we forget to kind of like check in with some of our trainees and actually like hear them out, like listen to them. Like I've had multiple times where I've taken over people's, I hate using the term clients, but I've taken over people's clients. It could either be the client's choice or the trainer's choice, but it was always because they're not doing this, or they're not getting it. And a lot of times within the first couple of weeks, I'm like, no, they get it, but it's the conversation that you're having with them. It's the cues that they're telling you that are going on in their life, whether it's movement based or whether they're creating their own blockage that doesn't allow them to form something that you want. So take that into consideration and figure out the cueing that's going to help them to perform whatever it is you might be asking of them. And there is a conversation that has to happen, but a lot of times, short on time, whenever it might be people are coming late, you just jump right into the workout. But, yeah, so I think it's just like more conversations do have to happen.
Yeah, and I could say like from the client perspective, being able to be in a room with a trainer and feel seen and feel that they're meeting you where you're at is so important. At least for me, I don't know about I can't speak for everyone, but it's nice to know that, like, whenever I've worked out with you, you always, like, even if there's something I couldn't do, you were adaptable, and you're like, okay, try this, and you made it fun, and you made it a good experience overall. It wasn't like a drill sergeant, like, do this 50, like, you weren't yelling at me, and I didn't want to leave crying in tears. I left feeling good about myself, and I think that says so much about just the whole process. You want to be able to go to these workouts or whatever sessions it is and have a good experience, because I think that's what helps people stay motivated to come back to do it again. When you leave and you're on the verge of tears because it was either too hard or you got yelled at or you just felt whatever you felt, the chances of someone coming back are probably slim.
Yeah.
Which kind of ties into, like similar to finding a good therapist that's a right fit, finding a good trainer is also really important, finding someone that's a good fit. So, like, do you have any advice as far as, like, how someone can go about making sure they find a trainer that is a good fit for them?
Yeah, I would honestly, I would say talk to them. Like, I've had many assessments. I had many assessments or first sessions, which when we were outside in the real world, before everything had to go virtual. Even now in virtual, sometimes people think they're meeting for a movement assessment, but we could spend about 45 minutes to an hour just talking and basically getting to know somebody, because it is a relationship, right? You're really trusting someone to develop your practice, not just a workout routine, right? It's your practice to basically progress to be a little bit better, right? Version 2.0 of yourself or whatever it might be. But talk, like, have an actual conversation, ask questions, ask the questions that you need when picking somebody out. It's a relationship at the end of the day that goes on. But I would say just ask the right questions. People are now posting a lot of stuff on social media, and I know it's different from when you actually get to sit down and do kind of like this one-on-one training, the personality that they present to you versus the person that they have to be on camera. But see what their training style is like, see what their energy is like through the camera, see how you feel about it, then reach out and talk to them, maybe through DM or email, however you want to do that, and then start a conversation from there.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that advice. This is hard, and some people just don't know even where to begin. There's so many different types of workouts. There's so many different types of, routes to go in that field, and it gets to be overwhelming. And so with you as a trainer, one of the things you practice is just conscious body awareness and understanding. It's a focal point to how, it's a focal point for how you work with clients. So can you share for people who are watching that might not know what body awareness is and being conscious of everything happening?
I guess the easiest way to put that is it's basically like the line or the conversation that happens between thought and the move that you want to execute and your body actually performing that. So with conscious body awareness, I guess I can just kind of give like a framework or a layout of what I do with most of my training sessions. It doesn't happen in all of them just because sometimes things don't resonate with them. But we normally do with something like a drop-in where you're honestly just sitting for a couple minutes and we're going through different breath cycles and observing the breath. I don't necessarily do that many like guided meditation breathing practices just because I'm not too confident in that. But it just starts off with there, just basically seeing where you're currently at. And then I'll start with smaller movements, things like opening up your shoulders and understanding that, like, yes, your shoulders do hold tension, and yes, you can relax them, and yes, you could move one side or the other side, and then slowly start to work my way down to the hips and the rest of the body through that. But basically the conversation that happens there. And then once we start to get into movements and stuff like that, it's understanding that certain muscle groups have to work together to basically produce a movement. Just basically being aware of everything that goes on within, just basically being present, I guess, in that moment.
So it's mindfulness for when you're Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important because, even when you're in the middle of a workout, and I'm talking about a personal experience again, so if anyone's watching this and doesn't relate, I'm sorry. But there's times where it's toward the end of the workout, you're exhausted, you feel like you just want to give up, but there's, a couple minutes left and you need to stick it out. And that's, I think, when that whole process really comes into play, at least for me, majorly, because I'm trying to stay motivated. I'm trying to push my body to do what it needs to do and get out of my mind versus my body. Like, I'm physically able to do it, but mentally I'm tired and I want to just give up, and it's that constant battle of the mind over matter and trying to keep going and not just lay like a starfish on my yoga mat,
But sometimes that's needed. That's needed sometimes.
Thank you. That makes me feel better knowing that and hearing that from you. But yeah, I mean, it's just so for some people, even just getting into a fitness journey of any sort is hard. Getting yourself started and finding how to find the motivation in yourself, how to find what workouts you like. That's the hardest part, I think, and being able to have people like you in this world that make it easy and fun for people is really a blessing, because there's some trainers out there who've definitely made me cry before. So thank you for not being one of them. So, I mean, as far as mental health goes, what benefits would you say, fitness has on our mental health? We've talked a little bit about, like, it's a balance. It's definitely a balance.
Yeah.
But what would you say are the, pros of exercise, and wellness on how we feel?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of great benefits to it. I think it's obviously, aside from like cardio and aerobic work and stuff like that, and also strength, but the confidence that comes from being able to do things that you normally thought you weren't able to do, right? So first starting physically, then eventually moving that to turning that into, like, I guess, real world scenarios, and like how you feel about that, like the confidence that could translate to that. Yeah.
I think too.
Oh, lost my thought.
No.
I was like, my thought went.
Okay. It happens to me all the time. I literally get so anxious and I just can't think and my mind goes blank. But no, I think too with like working out, I mean, science shows that there's a direct correlation between, exercise and improving symptoms of depression and even some symptoms of anxiety as well. Like those endorphins that get released after physical activity are so powerful for us. It's really something that even, if you spend 15, I think it was like as short as like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, one of the research studies I was showing said that 5 to 10 minutes of like physical activity can really just help boost your mood overall. So I think that's really telling how important it is, as a coping skill, but also just to kind of incorporate into your daily life. And I think people go into starting journeys for fitness to, have maybe with other motives to lose weight or for maybe some superficial reasons, and that's totally fine. But, there's also so many benefits mentally that can come out of that, because you're really leaving feeling accomplished, feeling like you did something that you maybe didn't think you could do. And that's really powerful. That's a really, really cool thing to feel. And
that made me realize, like, now the thought came back once you were talking about that, but using exercise or movement, and the reason why I say movement, because I think people forget that, like, expressive movement doesn't have to be, running for 40 minutes nonstop. If dancing, right, it's a way to get out of, like, your thinking brain and just move. And you realize that even with something as simple as dancing, like in your room, like curtains close, and I'm speaking from experience, curtains closed, like, you still find yourself being stopped. Like your brain can't shut off and it's telling you that something's wrong or this isn't right. But to be able to kind of like learn how to quiet that down and just to like kind of flow into another movement. Sorry, I got like sirens going off. It is really interesting. But the type of exercise you choose or the type of workouts you choose is also really important as far as like mental health goes. As of right now, like a lot of things that are being offered, especially for free, are like these classes online, whether that's in a live or things that have been recorded previously, but they always tend to be on the higher intensity side. If you're someone that spends a lot of time in the sympathetic mode, or you're constantly dealing with high stress from work, your relationship, your outside stressors, mental and emotional, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're like, I got to release this by doing a workout, or you stress yourself about hitting this high intensity workout. That's really tough because if you're looking at a spectrum of sympathetic and parasympathetic, your life is already on that high end, and then the choice that you use as an outlet for movement is going to be on that high side. You're never really going to be able to take yourself down to this side. So maybe instead of doing something that's high intensity for your workout after work or after a hard day, maybe just come back down to the other side. Maybe do something restorative yoga. Like Maybe go and find someone that has restorative Pilates. Maybe do, I'm going to say this again because this is a word, or not a word, this is a practice that's becoming more and more popular and being thrown around, but breath work. And there's many different people to go look for breath work, right? You have meditation, you have performance-based. But at the end of the day, it's just practicing your different breathing patterns.
Someone in the comments actually left a comment, and she said, "I've never felt more exposed, connected, present with my body and mind than when Foxie put me through a breathing cycle." So, see?
Wait, who said that?
Carolina Hernandez.
Oh, yeah. Yep. She's an amazing athlete, like amazing runner, and every single hour, 90-minute sessions that we have, I'm just like, breathe, relax. You're like, once you breathe, you can relax your shoulders. When you relax your shoulders, this could start to operate better. But there's a lot of power in breath. And shout out to my sister, Saida, who, is the one that kind of like made me realize like the power of breath. So she does she helps me with meditation, guided meditation with breath work. So she's one of the ones that I went to that I currently work with on a regular basis. But she showed me the power of meditation and breath work as far as a mental standpoint, and turning to a lot of like things that I suppress. And I didn't realize that I was constantly cueing people just to breathe through movements and performance. So then I started to tap into that a bit more, and how breathing starts to change during certain types of workouts or at certain energy outputs. But, yeah.
You were saying before too how like you would notice clients too, like when they're not breathing and you're like, breathe more, or take longer breaths or stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny, like working with getting to work with certain like trainees or even some of my friends who are trainers, because we hop on virtual to do workouts, and if I'm leading, I'll notice that for a certain movement that they're having trouble with, whether it's mobility or something that normally they're not competing well, it's interesting to see how they trap, like how the breath shows me that they're trapping something. But they're like, how did you know that I was holding everything on my shoulders? Or I'm trying not to raise my shoulders, but I'm just like, it's just how you hold your breath. Like I can tell, like we could tell that you're not breathing. And the moment that he started relaxing, things changed.
No, I think the whole idea of it's so simple and something that we really have full control over is our breath. But yet it happens in a way that we're not always aware of it or always conscious of it. And so it takes so much work to kind of bring consciousness to something that almost seems so simple. It's just really interesting how, whether it be through meditation or through for wellness in general, how we do have control of calming down our nervous system, and getting our heart rates down, or our pulse down when just by breathing and just by controlling our breath, which is really cool. So another question I had for you, I'm reading from my list here because I have a lot. Sorry. But you talked about like just having various clients that you work with, from runners to probably people just like me who maybe were ex-athletes at some point, or maybe just wanting to get into a good wellness routine. What kind of transformations have you witnessed just through helping your clients, whether that be physically or mentally or whatever? Like, what are some standout ones, or just some important ones that I think are good takeaways for people watching?
Yeah. Physical is always a good one, right? Because I think that's like physical and performance-wise, those are easy indicators to notice, right? And it's difficult because I have to have a lot of conversations to kind of change someone's thinking pattern about results. When someone comes in for body composition, which is a really tough one, and it's something that we're constantly fed through older magazines, right? Guys, get your bench press up, get your squat up, yet you can't really touch your toes, or you can't manage aggression, and like every workout, it's a lot of parts. But the interesting transformation isn't always the body composition ones. It's when they start to understand, like, shit, I thought I was coming in because I thought I had to lose 5 pounds, and I was stressing that 5 pounds constantly and nothing was changing. But talking with you in the process of training, or like what that could mean, like a lifestyle switch, their perspective shifted from having to lose 5 pounds versus like enjoying the process and being more present. And suddenly, because that perspective changed and their goal, like what they constantly had their eyes set on, shifted, their body, like for whatever reason, their body started to change a little bit more. Like the weight started to come off a little bit easier for them. Like they weren't stressing so much. They weren't in this high stress mode about losing weight constantly. Yeah. So those ones are always really important to me. It's just when someone's perspective could be kind of flipped or expanded, I guess. I'm working with a lot of like women who normally don't think that they could start to work towards their first pull-up or like ever doing a pull-up and then starting to work towards their first one and then hopefully like 3, and understanding that it is just taking small steps to get there. Like, yeah, you have an end goal or something that you didn't think was possible, but how do you work backwards? How do you break that into micro chunks? That's the stuff that's really interesting and fun for me as far as transformation goes.
Yeah, I think that's so telling because, you know, you go into it and you have these goals you want to meet maybe as a client and, you know, you're thinking if I don't meet these goals, it's not worth it, right? Or it's not whatever. And it's really more than it's more than that. You know, you're going in and you're learning a lot about yourself. You're learning a lot of just new ways to cope with mental health, to gain control over your body, whatever it may be, and you end up getting so focused sometimes on the goals you want to meet that the stress actually prevents the goals from reaching those goals, which is kind of it's so wild to me how our bodies are so attuned to that kind of stuff and how they work in that way, because it's like you have to just let it go. And you actually mentioned before we went live about, you know, a lot doing some interviews where, you know, people often ask you about like, well, how many reps should I do and how many, you know, what type of, you know, workout should I don't even know the terms because it's not my
that's true.
Call, but
a lot of times with these with conversations that are around fitness or even nutrition, when it's gaining insight from someone who is in the field, whether like, you know, the professional is trying to explain something or go through a curriculum or a course, a lot of times it's just to, well, how many reps should I be doing? What is the right thing? Like, what's the answer? And if someone isn't getting, even though it's been told through like social media or like books and stuff like that, like many answers are out there. It just really depends on where you're currently at. If you're not feeding the person that's like taking in or digesting it, what they actually want to hear, they get turned off to it, which is really disheartening. I think something that's super important, especially with these talks, is to understand that you are developing a practice, right? You are practicing. Like, that's why training programs, it's difficult to do one size fits all, right? It's in cookie cutter stuff because you don't know what someone's going through. You don't know what their limitations might be, whether that's an actual physical limitation and how to strengthen those, or if it's an actual mental blockage. So that some things do have to be really personalized, and some things you do have to do trial and error. You might go 3 weeks into something, but now and not have it work out, but you at least understand that you've tried A, B, and C, and it wasn't your thing. So now you're going to try 1, 2, 3 on this different route. But yeah, as far as these talks go, a lot of people do try and swing it towards, you need to tell me the right rep range. And I'm like, I don't know. It depends on where you're at. Like, I don't know what your goal is. I don't know your background. I don't know. Yeah.
And it really truly is meeting each person individually and looking at it as an individual perspective, not just everything being so concrete, because, you know, very similar to therapy, like, you know, you have clients come in and from client to client, every person is different. And I think that's the basis of understanding, is trying not to compare our journeys to someone else's journeys, whether that be through fitness or through just therapy and mental health or whatever, nutrition, you know, whatever journey you're on. Because we all are individuals, and we all have our own unique experiences, and our bodies all are different. And, you know, it's really important to kind of just be able to meet ourselves where we're at and know what works best for us as who we are, you know, and not kind of generalizing things, because that is when things get you don't get the best results from that kind of stuff. At least for therapy, I could say, like, what I would work on with one client probably wouldn't be what I would work on with another client, because, you know, they might not.
I like to believe that.
So, yeah.
That's true.
One question, and if anyone has questions at all and wants to ask in the comments, please, by all means, ask questions. I'll ask him on here. He's like, no.
I'm like, if I know you and you're asking questions, no, I was playing.
One question I have is, you know, what would you say to someone who's struggling to just get themselves to the mental point to just actually start the workout? Like, sometimes for me, in the mornings, if I'm going to do a workout, I just can't get myself to do it. I know I want to do it, but it's just like I'm dilly-dallying around. It's taking me forever to change. Like, I just can't get my mind right to get started. So what advice would you have for someone who's
action is way more intimidating in thought than actually doing it, right? That's the idea of living with, like, anxiety. Something hasn't actually happened yet, so sometimes we're intimidated to do something, but other times we could, just not be in the mood. I think we have to be able to self-regulate, because sometimes you might just be tapped out. You might have had an amazing 4 days back to back to back, and you might have not realized that you had too many high days, so your body can't recover. So you have to be able to check in and understand, like, okay, cool, if I'm going to take this day off, I have to mentally be okay with taking this day off or doing some type of active recovery or whatever, or switching the program to work a bit better for me. If it is just being in the dumps or having a low, right, because that happens, highs and lows give contrast to life.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in the dumps, then try something like, I mean, it's funny, this is me speaking from experience, because I have my days, I have a lot of my days. I have a lot of days within days, it feels like, especially now. But best thing to do is put your training gear on. Like, even if, like, you're supposed to work out at 10 o'clock, put your training gear on. Like, it's all about taking one step, and then you take that next step. All right, now I'm training gear's on, let me, like, go ahead and make this piece of toast and peanut butter or whatever. It's funny because I have my PB&J down here. But yeah, it's just about taking steps. And some people talk about motivation. Oh, like, I got to watch something for motivation, or I need the motivation. Motivation isn't always there. It's more about the consistency that you have to build, I think. Sometimes you have to get yourself up. You have to make the choice. You have to just, like, run one foot in front of the other for a couple more blocks, and then a couple more minutes with training or whatever. You're pushing maybe one more rep or so. Things that have helped me personally is, after lacing up and I still might not feel like it, I start with something super simple like jump roping. A little jogger, bounce in place, kind of move around, bring sensation to the body, kind of like get my mind into it. Before, I used to have, like, in the studios that I worked at, there were bikes, assault bikes, cycling bikes, and I would just spin something so automated that you could do with your eyes closed and just kind of, like, focus on breathing, kind of wrap myself up and spend about 3 to 5 minutes of just doing light movement. Mm-hmm. And then I'll move into my stretches and just really try and be present during my stretches. Like, all right, how does my hip feel during this knee hug? I'm going to talk a lot about hips just because I hold a lot in my hips. But yeah, how do my hips feel during knee hugs, during, like, certain stretches, low back discomfort, tightness? Okay, cool. Can I get it to relax? But just start with small steps and, like, take these small cues. And next thing you know, you might be like 20 or 30 minutes already into your workout.
Yeah. And those body scans are so important. Being able to see, like, what areas are a little stiff or sore, where you might need to, like, ease up for that day. Just being able to kind of read your body and see what you need and what might work best for you in that time. But on the flip side, you mentioned before too that there's people sometimes who cope with their mental health by working out, but they take it to the extremes, to the point where there might be a concern, like another concern for mental health, whether that be eating disorder concern or, whatever it may be. How would you recognize that in a client or in anyone? Like, what are some signs that, you would say are pretty good indicators? And how would you maybe talk to a client?
In those situations, sometimes it is difficult to talk about, like, taking it a little bit easier. So sometimes if it is a client or a friend asking or someone that I know asking, and I have been helping build their programming, I might just switch the workout to something a little bit easier. Like, it's just a switch of hands, something a little bit lighter. This goes back to working on that high end and also understanding self-regulating. Like, what reoccurring harm is happening. Like, a lot of times people don't realize that some of these injuries that they're constantly running into is because they're not they're not giving their body what they need, which could either be taking the day off, could be feeding the body at people who, sometimes could be feeling super low or going through, one of their patterns or their loops and miss meals, and then be like, but I'm still going to go and do this training session. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to kill it. I'm like, I can't pull you out of that if you don't really want to listen. Mm-hmm. But I think it definitely does have to do with being able to self-regulate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, am I constantly running to injuries? Am I constantly holding discomfort in certain places? Am I not allowing myself to recover? Like, as much as we think about it, like if you're talking about training, movement is just one part. You still have to sleep and you still have to eat. And then you go on a larger spectrum. If we start talking about wellness, you're talking about mental, emotional, and physical, right? So it's just like you have to look at those things whenever you're thinking about where your mindset is for training.
You know, I definitely agree. And I think, rest days, I'm hearing you say rest days are okay. It's okay to listen to your body. And if you need to rest, and that's what your body's telling you, you don't have to keep pushing yourself to the point of exhaustion or worse.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people, like one thing working with clients, and then one thing working with training and working with clients, I realized that they were doing a lot more strenuous workouts and learning. Like my thing is to learn a variety. Like it might be one movement pattern, but you're learning a variety of ways to do it. To understand that in any given situation in the outside world, you trust your body to be able to move the way that it should. And if it's in a position that's not competent or efficient, it can still produce your outcome. But some of these training programs, if you're looking from like a week or even within that hour, a lot of things are thrown at them, and sometimes it's more than what most. It's covering a bunch of modalities that sometimes even professional athletes don't have to cover. If that makes any sense, like our sport is life, right? Our sport isn't. We're not basketball players. We're not ballers. I mean, outside of anymore. Sorry, people are like, oh, I'm turning this off. No, it's like, but when we go back to training, we forget that we have to learn a variety of things, and we have to be okay with demands that come with that and how to manage that.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me too, one of the demands or one of the things I've had to come to terms with was, being an athlete my whole life, graduating college, and for me I was so used to having a coach, or someone there to kind of push me through a workout or a practice or whatever it may be, and then having to do it on my own. The self-motivation piece was really challenging for me to do it on, because I just felt like I didn't know what to do because I was always kind of being told what to do. And then eventually when I finally got back into it, I didn't just pick up where I left off. I had to kind of start over and rebuild some of that strength for myself and rebuild, just not being able to do a push-up where I could normally do a lot of those when I was like fit in my prime. But like coming to terms with that too mentally was really challenging for me, and also just being able to be like, wow, I really got old, and like blaming it on my age and blaming on like how my body changed as I got older and stuff like that. And but that's normal, I think. I hope.
Yeah, I love those moments. Anytime, like I do it to myself. Like anyone who allows me, like holds space for me and allows me to talk. It's funny because you'll see me go through all my excuses. I can't do that, and I'm just like, okay, cool, I got excuses out. Now I'm actually going to go try. But when I work with people who are like, oh yeah, I used to play football in college, and I used to do this, and this, and they're constantly living in that past moment and using that as like, yeah, even though I can't do this right now, I used to be able to do it. I'm like, well, let's figure out where you're currently at now and understand and be okay with like, hey, this is my current container. I need to understand that like it can get back to where that was before, but I need to start now and expand it. A lot of times we get so like discouraged and yeah, with push-ups, it's just like that moment you feel an obstacle or restriction, people will give up. So like with my training and strength and resistance and getting people more comfortable with push-ups, pull-ups, I find tension points. Any point that they might normally tense up or a moment that they might consider a breaking point, right? The first sign of resistance, they want to turn and give up. I'm like, you're going to hold it. You're going to hold at that tension point, the part that you normally feel as if you can't do, and this is your disadvantage. You have to understand how to get out of this.
Yes. And
it's just working with that constantly and letting them know that like this is your homework for this set or this 5 minutes. Like take your time. Like the time's going to be there. It's not crazy amount of reps or whatever it might be, but take your time. We're going to dismantle this and have you rebuild yourself back up.
I'm smirking because we had a question come in, and I'm going to add it there. But unrelated to the topic, it's from Colin, my boyfriend. He wants to know how the Dyson fan is behind you, if you like it.
Yo. Please don't pay attention to these numbers. If you have a Dyson fan, these numbers are going off in my room. I used to think I was like clean, I was like, yeah, I'm like wiping stuff down, and then, I'm vacuuming constantly. And then this thing is like, yo, you got pollen everywhere, you got dust, you got chemicals. It's good. I love it. Like it's constantly going off between like cooking in these small shoebox apartments in New York, and like windows open and all that stuff. It's dope. I like it a lot.
I'm jealous. I want the Dyson hair dryer so bad.
I've actually had the opportunity to see like all the stuff that goes into making that, and I'm like, shout out to y'all for all the thoughts that go behind. Like they go as far as like trying to listen to like the humming of the motor, so that way when it's too close to your ear, it's not bothering you for time. Like it's pretty interesting. Shout out Dyson.
We have the cordless vacuum. I love it. I'm obsessed. I like it. I love vacuuming. So I'm like Danny Tanner. I'm like the female Danny Tanner.
They have the Turbo Boost now one, which is like it's nasty how much stuff that pulls up with the Turbo Boost. It almost makes you wish you didn't realize you had that vacuum because you're like.
That's the one we have. It's amazing. We have a cat, so I'm allergic to the cat, so helps with my allergies. That's what I say. Okay, let me see what other questions I have for you. I'm looking through the comments too. A lot of people here really, really loving you, so I'm excited for you to go back and read all the comments. They're the best. Okay. I guess the next one is, have you had any clients, or just in your experience, have you ever seen anyone kind of be able to relate, like, as they continued their journey, like, they started getting stronger, or they, started seeing the physical results and the benefits, like, have you seen it outright, like, how it impacted their mental health, as far as, like, feeling more confident if they got stronger, or feeling more accomplished and motivated as they, met some fitness goals that they were trying to reach from a certain point?
Yeah. What's interesting with that is, like, it's funny, I used to be teased at the old studio I worked at for being like the trainer, like, oh, if you just want to talk for an hour, train with Ariel. But I was also one of the ones that could do a variety of things. So, like, I've always paid attention to the quality of conversations that happen, right? Like, I normally don't say much about it, but I'm listening constantly, whether that's through the warm-up or how you come in, and what you're carrying, or how your energy is being carried. But the thing that was really interesting, once they start to get over these physical feats, is the quality and perspective of themselves starts to shift. And how, like, the things that they would come in to tell me were no longer about things that were necessarily weighing them down, but more about the positives. And that could either be from training, the conversation that came up within that time, or just other things. But I always thought that was kind of cool, because as they were physically progressing, their, like, mental capacity for themselves was starting to take a shift, which is always fun to see. How
is it for you mentally as a trainer, as someone who does that for people? You're essentially really helping transform people mentally, physically, on all levels. Like, what does that do for your mental health? Because I'm sure there's days where you're living your life, you have everything else going on in the world. Like, how do you come in on days where maybe you don't want to, and you bring your A game, or when you're feeling great? Like, what's that like for you?
Yeah, it's it's a good one. It's funny because people think, like, as far as being a trainer, that we're working out every day. I want to say one of the positives about being in quarantine, especially since within the first couple of weeks I pushed off, like, doing virtual training, just because that's a difficult thing. I prefer to be there with people. Mm-hmm. But I was actually able to, and I had talked to a couple other trainers about it, but we don't realize, like, we don't get to check in with ourselves that often. Like, our work is you're literally there with somebody for a certain amount of time. It's normally about an hour or 45 minutes, but you're constantly, again, managing and watching people, and then that clears out. You might have 5 minutes, and then you get into another one, so you're never actually able to check in with yourself. Mm-hmm. So my mental health used to take a pretty large hit, like, and I'm still trying to find a happy balance. Like, again, this is why within the first few weeks I was actually able to sit with myself and start to nourish a lot of things that I kind of neglected for a long time, because I was filling up my work schedule with 6 to 8 sessions a day, and people are like, oh, that's only about 6 hours of your day. I'm like, no, I sit with people for 90 minutes or 75, however much time they allow me, plus in order to get into my next, like, if someone has time to be with me, or they're opening up, and sometimes it takes a second for people to open up, I'm going to allow them to do that. I'm going to be there for you. And sometimes that might overlap or the next person might come in, but whatever, like I wasn't able to check in with myself. And I didn't know how to displace a lot of that burnout feeling. I didn't know how to displace a lot of the uneasiness. So that's when my sisters really started to help me out quite a bit, because I was so used to taking on a lot of other people's stressors or stories, and because I hear what they're currently going through, I wasn't actually able to displace mine. Mm-hmm. So I would just hold a lot of things, and you start to hold a lot of things without really dealing with it. You're suppressing a lot of stuff. So I didn't know how to do that. So one thing that really helped out was just talking with my sisters about it, and not in a sense where I also started with a mental coach not too long ago, who helps me take a look at my stuff. But the idea of not like giving me the right answer for things, but being like, hey, look, we get that you're seeing something from this perspective, but can you look down at this way? Or can you look this way? Or can you or even just, okay, yeah, that feeling might be there. It's going to be there. Don't run from it. We can't take it from you. You have to sit with it, or you move past it. Yeah. But whatever you choose to do, you have to accept and keep going. Yeah, my mental health is getting a lot better. Like, I'm someone that spends a lot of time in my physical body. I'll keep going back to it. Like, the idea of doing, right, the act of doing is always easier than the act of being for me. Like, even when I used to try and do meditation, which I always thought I was doing wrong, because they're like, don't move, or like, be still, practice stillness. And anytime I find disruption happen, I didn't realize that my feet would start to bounce, or I would start to move my hands or my wrists, because I'm trying to constantly get away from it. Mm-hmm. But it's getting better. Talk therapy definitely helps.
Well, if you ever need anything, I'm here. I got you. And hopefully Mentl one day will be a private practice in a couple of months, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But
I'm here for it.
No, it's really though, like you're essentially a therapist. Like you really are. Because you're carrying a case, you're carrying a caseload. You have to remember everyone's things, like about them, their name, their data, the data, what they're working on, their goals, their life woes that they tell you, and you're hearing about a lot of people's personal problems that sometimes don't even need to be in the room, but it's part of it. I think it comes along with it, and that's a lot. And vicarious trauma, is a whole thing. You probably have clients who've gone through some stuff in their life, and being able to share that to you and open up with you about that, is amazing. But it's also like their vicarious trauma is a real thing, hearing about things and maybe feeling triggered, or countertransference is what we call it in the therapist world, where, a client might say something to us that makes us feel a way, and we have to try and keep our emotional intelligence and regulate our emotions in check, and not let our biases or whatever it may be come into the room. I'm sure you experience a lot of that as well, because you're working with people. You're working with people. It's hard.
Thank you.
It's hard. But I think it's important to discuss like how you handle it all, because it's not easy. It's not easy, and there's days I'm sure where you're not feeling your best, but you have to come in with your game face on and be ready to do what you got to do, and that's hard.
Yeah, and but within those moments of working with people, there is a moment where I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah. Which
is nice. It's this thing where it's just like, oh, now I'm alone. Shit, I got to sit with my thoughts. But I didn't realize I had that big of a issue with it until like during one session I was working with someone. They came in a little late, and they immediately wanted to go into the workout and were rushing things, and I had them try and slow down a bit. And they turned to me and they're just like, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask, like, how are you? And just that alone was enough for me to be like, and I almost, like, my voice got shaky, like, things started to happen. I was just like, and it's someone who I trust enough to, like, exchange, and I was just like, I'm tired. Like, I didn't realize, like, you're going 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week of physical hours, and outside of that, you still have to manage a lot of other things that you don't actually get to sit down with it.
Yeah.
So.
That's so real and valid. I get that totally. Sometimes my clients come in and ask me how I am. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, I wish I could tell you everything.
Please, someone ask me, hold me.
But no, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and I get it, and I commend you for it, because working with people is not easy. On the level that you're working with people, and it's hard. But all right, you ready for these rapid fire questions?
Well, let's do it. Let me wipe my.
They're gonna be fun.
I've been doing this all day.
All right. First question. If you were an exercise, which exercise would you be?
Crying? Is that burns calories? Something else? Like, if I was an exercise, what exercise would I be? I'm gonna have to say assault bike. I know that sounds so messed up, and that's not necessarily an exercise; it's a tool. But that thing, like, it definitely shows you different sides of people. But yeah, air bike workout. But yes, battle ropes is another one. But these arms could only carry me so far, you know.
Okay, next question. If you could go out for coffee, tea, any beverage that you drink with any person, who would you go? Who would you choose?
Oh man, especially right now. There's so like I have. Oh, actually no.
Or three. You could say 3 people if you want to have a little tea party.
Well, it would definitely be my family. Like, that's one thing that I appreciate during this time is the communication and FaceTimes and text messages that are happening daily with them. And we're so dispersed right now. But yeah, I'd be with my parents and my sisters. And my cousin. Sorry, she definitely grew up with us. But that's something that I definitely want to do. Like coffee, break bread, food, all of that.
Hell yeah. That's
yeah.
Awesome. What's the first thing you're going to do after quarantine's over?
Ooh. Our borders opened up. Can we travel yet?
I don't know.
Yeah? No? Yeah?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, sure.
Well, if it's just by city, like, I definitely want to sit down in a restaurant and just, like, people watch. And, like, that's always a fun time, like, way to pass time for me. But traveling would be the other option if I could.
We have a question from your sister. How many cookies and what type do you eat on a mental day?
I'm guessing that's from Solara.
Yep.
Yeah, because I called her yesterday to try and talk to my niece, and we started talking about cookies. But I've been limiting them. So I normally give myself 3 chocolate chip cookies at night, and then I'll have 3 peanut butter filled cookies right after. And then if I'm gaming, a few more might slip in, so it could be a box within a day. Who knows? I mean, you gotta live your life.
Oh my god, I love it. Okay, and then last question. Do you have a favorite sneaker? Or a grail of any type?
You know what? I'm gonna be honest. I'm sad that I slept on your 270s. Like, I'm honestly like kind of sad about that, especially with the name and then the fact that like you altered the line, like the check mark was. Yeah, I really wish I didn't sleep on that. Dang, favorite sneaker. I'm trying to think what I wear as a daily. That's hard. I can't think of one off top.
Yeah, same. I'm like all over the place, to be honest. When people ask me that question, I'm like, I don't know, Mars Yards, but I don't even know.
Yeah, I'm like, don't give me many shoes. I don't do that because then I can't think. Like I'm that kid. Like my mom and my dad would only buy me 1 pair of shoe because they wanted me to understand how to like increase the longevity, and I'm over here like kicking curbs and like trying to use them as soaps and like skateboarding in them and stuff like that. So it's just like I went from having 1 pair of shoe and they weren't ever Nikes, right? Like they were like Airwalks, Shaqs, and then for some reason I really liked the Walmart Velcro shoes because I thought I was going to be a b-boy, and they were only like $10.
I love it.
And now I have like when things drop, I try and win the raffle, and I buy stuff for myself now. So there's a few that I'll put into rotation, but I don't know. We'll see.
All right. So do you want to let people know where to find you, how to contact you if they are interested in being a potential client, or just asking questions or following you on your life journey?
Yeah. I'm getting better at it, but social media, it's @_ Ariel Fox. That's for Instagram. I don't have a Twitter because I can't figure out my password and I don't want to make a new one. Website is coming together, so that'll happen soon. But for the most part, Instagram is the easiest way to reach out to me. I try my best to have as many conversations with people. And please, like, have a conversation with me. Don't hit me up and then be like, yo, how do I get in with this brand? Or, like, talk to me. Like, let's talk about something, what you're going through. Those are more important with me. I now have my email up there. If you want to reach out through email, that's there. I've also done instances where, especially now, it's virtual calling through Instagram, which is easy. If someone, I'm not good with Word, like typing stuff out. I'm that person that will type something like from the heart and then be like, delete that whole thing. Like, I rather, because I give myself a second to talk, but I rather just say it out loud. Like, we could hop on a video call and see what you're going through. But Instagram's easiest, _Ariel Fox.
Cool. I have it in the description of this video too, so if anyone needs to see it, it's there. But yeah, thank you so much for being on. It's an hour. We've been on here for an hour. It went by quick. But you killed it, and I thank you so much for all of your insight. It's super helpful for me as well, and I'm sure everyone watching is learning a lot of gems because it really is a good tool for mental health. And you're really a great person to reach out to or just look or follow along to get motivation, inspiration, and answers, I think, on a lot of this because I'm not an expert in it. You are. So thank you. I appreciate you and your time. But yeah, I'm going to say happy Friday, happy weekend to everyone and sign off. And we will be in touch, I'm sure. But
yeah, or many more of these, hopefully.
Yes, for sure. There's more to come in the future with Mentl. I'm hoping so. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Peace.